Well, I'll be. It's time for another episode of the Bionicle Inspiration series. I always wonder if people just like have never watched this and then I start off in a weird voice and they're like, oh, is that, oh. Anyway, hi, it's me, it's Ben, and today we're going to be talking about the Toa Metru. There was a cool little collab with some very talented Bionicle builders, and I wanted to talk about these very, very good renditions or revamps of the Toa Metru, because hey, the Toa Metru are really, really cool, and these mocks are really, really cool. So let's dive in and let's start talking about some really, really well designed Toa Metru mocks, and maybe you can get some ideas if you want to revamp them yourself, or I don't know, it's nice to just look at some cool mocks and get some ideas. So let's dive on in. The very first mock we've got today is by your boy Patrick Biggs, and this is Toa Vakama. So there's a lot of really good stuff about this one here. I especially really enjoy the stand that this mock is, well, standing on, or the base, whatever you want to call it. It uses a design that I believe Anthony Wilson came up with. That's what Patrick says in the description here. But it's this really awesome looking like hexagon, like kind of almost like the inside of like a beehive kind of terrain of sorts. It's just also kind of just like a really interesting rock design or something. I don't know. It also kind of reminds me of the Colosseum from the Legends of Metru Nui movie. If I remember it correctly, it's been a while since I've watched that movie. The landscape in the stadium sort of rose up like that, and I thought it was in that sort of hexagonal pattern like that. I'm sure that might be the actual inspiration here, but even still, it does look like some sort of cool, interesting rock formation of sorts, and it's just really distinct and different, you know? And I'm always a big fan of seeing stands underneath mocks like this, just because, I don't know, it just adds a little bit of context, kind of helps tell a bit of a story. But I think here especially, it's just this really visually pleasing pattern, and there's just something really nice about it. So I think that's just something to keep in mind, whether it's with a base on a mock or just a mock in general. If you can come up with a really sort of distinct, different, really visually pleasing looking like aesthetic or shape or design like that, even if it doesn't necessarily say anything, it can just look cool and it can really sell the mock in a really interesting way. So it's certainly something to consider if you can have a cheeky think about something like that. Some other really interesting stuff on this mock here is the Vakama mask that's been used here. Of course, this is just typically Vakama's mask, but it's in silver. And we all know Mr. Patrick Biggs has the sick hookups, and he's got all those beautiful, rare, misprinted and mismolded and wrongly colored Bionicle masks and pieces and things. So, you know, I'm suitably jealous. But, you know, if you've got one, you may as well put it in a mock. And it's nice to see it being used so well. I would be curious to see this mock with the original dark red mask here. I wonder how that would look, but I do like the fact that, you know, he's wearing a sort of, you know, black and dark red attire of sorts, and underneath he has a, you know, his silver flesh, I guess. I don't know, that's a weird sentence, but I know that's kind of the way I see it, that, you know, the mask isn't inherently a part of the rest of the body, that is his head, his skin or whatever. So it's an interesting way of approaching it, and I quite like that. And by all means, if you have a painted or misprinted mask like that, may as well put it to good use because it looks amazing here. He also has these cool disc launchers, and I think the disc in his other hand there, that silver one with the sort of Unity, Duty, Destiny symbol there, I think that's a rare piece as well. I don't recognize that. I'm sure it's some other sort of super rare piece that I'm not familiar with, but looks cool. But the disc launcher itself, so Vakama originally had the sort of normal disc launcher that most of the sets had, but it had sort of like flamey wings on the side. So I like how Patrick here has, you know, taken that, but sort of jazzed it up in a really interesting way. It looks a little bit more like a crossbow, almost, kind of. But it has this wonderful, almost very slight sort of steampunk vibe, but at the same time does look a little bit more sort of exotic and different, which I really enjoy. So it's cool to give it a bit of flair, and I like the fact that the flair is golden, because there is this, you know, gold accent throughout this mock. So it's very visually pleasing. In terms of the overall aesthetic on Vakama here, this is obviously something that Patrick excels at, is adding coats on mocks, but also just making mocks look snazzy. I found this like sort of cyberpunk-inspired image of this cool dude with some snazzy pants, some snazzy little skinny jeans, and you know, a very nice sort of red coat. But there's other different colors of coats in this image and stuff. But to me, that's what Vakama looks like here. He looks like some sort of, I don't know, like Dick Grayson sort of hothead kind of dude with a popped collar and a really snazzy jacket, and he's like, "Oh man, hey, it's me. What's up?" You know. I don't know. I think it kind of fits Vakama to some degree, and I think it just fits Toa of Fire in general, giving them coats like that. I don't know. It's it's just a really solid, nice-looking aesthetic, and it's interesting to see like a character form out of it. Of course, Vakama had his own sort of specific character, but I don't know. I like the idea of Toa of Fire with really sick coats. I think it's just really fitting. So I do like your work there, good sir. I especially like the actual collar that he has, sort of around the neck there. That's just a really interesting design, and you don't really see collars on mocks that much. It's cool. So really, really great take on Vakama, and I love the inclusion of all these different ring pieces on the feet and the jacket, giving it this sort of, I don't know, interesting sort of color scheme or sort of ringed design to the attire. It's just really fitting and really nice. So I do like it. I do like it indeed. Anyway, let's move on to the next mock now. This is by Velocijactor, and this is Toa Matau. So this one's certainly a bit different, a very different look and aesthetic for Matau here, and I love it. I love the inclusion of a little bit of lime in there. It really makes it pop and really makes it kind of stand out from your sort of typical everyday Matau or the original set even. So I think it's really fitting, and nothing wrong with doing that too. If you do want to revamp a mock, why not introduce another color, or even if it is just a little sort of splattering or a little highlight like that. Nothing wrong with that at all. I think it's glorious. I like it a lot. I also like the idea of making him a little bit more sort of spindly and skinny than, you know, comparing it to the original, or even comparing it to Vakama from before. It makes sense, because if he is a Toa of Air and he can fly and stuff, it makes sense that he wouldn't have a super like heavy body, because, you know, he's got to be able to glide and fly and all that sort of stuff. He'd have to be sort of more streamlined and, you know, not too heavy, otherwise he can't lift himself up, that sort of thing. So I like the fact that he has this more sort of slimmed down aesthetic, because it kind of just makes sense, you know? It's like a plane, you know? I don't know. It's cool. I like it a lot. I also quite enjoy the very sort of spindly, kind of like beams, or like, what would you call them? Pistons. That's the word I'm looking for. The fact that there's some on the legs there and there's also some on the torso, I don't know, it just looks nice. It really, to me, I always love that aesthetic, that sort of like T shape on torsos on Bionicles. To me, there's something so intrinsically Bionicle-y about it. And I think it just looks gorgeous. And it's a pretty simple way to build those, just using some of the very typical, you know, bar elements from system sets. And surely some of those came with other Bionicle sets and Hero Factory stuff that I'm not currently recalling. I'm sure some of them did. So it's a pretty simple technique, but it goes a long way. It's those little sort of subtle system integrations like that really elevate this mock here. So I love that sort of, even some of those like minifigure whip pieces there as well, as sort of like wires and different things. It's a really distinct and different aesthetic that I think really, really works. So love your work there, good sir. Even the little aerial that he's got up there, like he's a plane that, you know, calls into a communication tower or something. I don't know, it's cool. It's certainly a bit of thought that's been put into why this mock looks the way it does, at least the way I'm seeing it. So nice work, good sir. Next mock now. This is by Eo Okononen, and this is Toa Nakama. So this obviously has a bit more of a sort of samurai aesthetic, because why not? But I also wanted to read up some of the stuff that Eo said on his website about this mock. So he said that he never actually owned the original set for Toa Metru. He said that he had some of the, you know, the parts lying around from it, from, you know, different stuff in his collection. But he really enjoyed watching Toa Nakama in the Legends of Metru Nui, and he also just says Legends of Metru Nui, even to this day, stands up as a good movie, which, again, I haven't watched it in ages, but I believe that. It was certainly a good one as a wee lad. So yeah, just on that alone, I love that fact, the fact that he never actually had this set in his collection, but he still was able to build something with it. I like that, you know? Maybe you just have the mask of some random character. Well, why not build your own sort of custom body based around it? No reason you can't, you know? And just because you don't have all the pieces to rebuild that character you love and stuff, there's always another alternative, even if you really stray from the source material there. So I like that, just as sort of the general, I don't know, philosophy of that. It's certainly something to consider if you're a little worried that I don't quite have the pieces for it. Maybe there's some other ways of approaching it here. Another thing he said here was, he said that his version was not really based on the film version, though there are some similarities that he kept. He said that he didn't want to build a human in a Bionicle mask, so he deliberately left some areas a little bit more robotic, specifically on the legs. I don't know, there was just something about the way that was worded that really grabbed me. The idea of building a Bionicle as a human in a Bionicle mask. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes you just hear something said in a unique way, and it just kind of takes you back, you know, and you're kind of like, I never thought of it in that regard. That was kind of just that for me, that sentence there, where I'm like, yeah, I guess that's kind of how some people build a Bionicle character, is that they're a human with a Bionicle mask on, or it's sort of like a dude in a suit, or do you approach building a Bionicle as more of a like, this mask is just a part of the armor that makes up their entire body, or they're this mechanical being. They don't, necessarily, they're not wearing a suit, or they're not, I don't know. I just find that so interesting, the way that, sometimes I find when I build a Bionicle, or when I build any sort of like humanoid character, you kind of can really separate it from that of a typical human. You can just sort of see it as this mechanical mix of different parts and objects and things. I don't know, they just, to me, really open up the way of looking at it, What specifically is it that you're building? Are you just building a cool robot, or is this a dude in a suit, or is this, I don't know, it's just, I don't quite know how to word what I'm saying here, guys, but I don't know, there's something about that really grabbed me. Hopefully you're seeing what I'm seeing there, but let's start talking about the mock specifically here. So the samurai vibes are really cool. I love how he's done these sort of shoulders or kind of upper arms on this mock here. Looking at typical sort of samurai images and stuff, it's quite a sort of typical trope of samurai armor. So it's really well done, especially using those sort of curved slope pieces like that. That's, to me, is just really cool. Really stands out. Really makes this mock look awesome. The helmet itself is also really nice, just adding the little slight horns like that, because again, there's some samurai vibes with it. But also just kind of looking at Nakama's mask, it kind of does have a very sort of subtle hints of being a little bit more samurai helmety in nature. I don't know, it's cool. Never really looked at that mask like that before, but I can see little subtle hints, more towards sort of the sides, how it kind of puffs out a little bit. That's nice, it's cool. I also quite enjoy this general torso design here, using those little dots elements to kind of give her this little, almost like heart light in her chest there. Nice little way of doing that, nice little way of just sort of creating a little bit of, I don't know, interesting pattern there. It's really cool. And in general, these weapons are really interesting as well. The original Nakama had kind of weird weapons. I don't know, they were kind of like little fin, anchor things of sorts. I don't know. It's nice to see them being reimagined in a really cool light here. I think that's just awesome, honestly. So, yeah, some really nice stuff here. I think that the feet are also really interesting. This weird, I don't know, almost sort of like robotic look to them. But they also kind of look quite realistic. Again, that kind of leans back to what I was saying before of it being, is she a robot, or is she a human in a robot suit, or is she a human in an Iron Man suit, or whatever? Is she half robot, half human? I don't know. Kind of looking at those legs, I go like, it looks pretty robotic to me, but maybe there's just some snazzy shoes. I don't know. So it's pretty cool. So yeah, I think it's a pretty bold, interesting, unique take on Nakama. Really nice work. Now let's move on to a mock by Mr. Alex Mox, and this is Toa Nuju. I might go so far as to say this might be my favorite mock of the year so far. I don't know, it's a bold claim, but I very, very much enjoy this. Texture play on this is phenomenal. I thoroughly enjoy how he's made this really beautiful sort of underbody of just like greebles and pistons and other sort of beautiful mechanical looking details. And then how on top of that he's layered on this beautiful white smooth armor. It's just some fantastic texture play at work here. But also just some generally really snazzy looking techniques all throughout this. Looking at the legs, how there's this sort of like two-pronged sort of piston look there, really sort of sturdy, strong pistons at the front and sort of slightly thinner ones at the back that you can almost sort of see the gears and pistons like whirring and ticking away as it would move. And I don't know, there's just something about like even the feet there, just how I can see how that would move and shape as he would walk and sort of lift up his toes and his feet and just plop it down. There's just this great sense of sort of life behind it all. It's fantastic. Again, I love that torso design using those sort of like dish pieces, those system parts there to sort of form this like central pillar that sort of almost acts as like a spine. And these two sort of side little piston things holding up the rest of the body there. That looks exquisite. And then the way that he's sort of shaped the elbows there as well, very similar to the legs, how it sort of branches down into the lower arm. And is kind of quite similar to sort of like a general bone, how it kind of goes off in sort of, not really similar to a bone, I don't know what I'm saying, but how it sort of branches off into the two areas there and, that sort of larger connection, that sort of sub-connection there that sort of reinforces it. It's really, really cool. I thoroughly enjoy that. And I also quite enjoy the shoulders here using those two Stormer helmets there. I think they just naturally fit into the rest of the textures very nicely, and I always love seeing masks there as shoulder armor. I think that 9 times out of 10 looks pretty good. I also quite enjoy the scarf that he has. Any mock that has a scarf is a good mock, in my opinion. And it's also nice to see another cloth element being used as a sort of, I don't know, like sleeping bag or other sort of swag on the back of his backpack there. Is pretty cool. It was pretty cool indeed. So I just Googled bones because I was like, wait a minute. No, bones do that. They do kind of branch out, especially on the arms there. So I like that it's kind of mimicking that of a skeleton. I don't know. I had it in my head that the bone was just the... Anyway, it's a late night. I'm thinking weird. Anyway, still, this is a great mock. Ignore my lack of anatomy knowledge. Anyway, so yeah, the backpack itself I think is also phenomenal. The way the sort of flex tubing acts as the straps on the backpack there. And just a really nice looking backpack design in general. He has those beautiful ice picks as well. Really interesting fitting weapon for that of a Toa of Ice. And just a really solid looking design. And I don't know, just overall, he looks awesome. I don't know, I can just see him kind of climbing through the ice mountains, exploring, taking his backpack out, getting some hot soup and drinking it, setting up a tent for the night. I don't know. There's just a great sense of personality. There's lovely techniques. It's just gorgeous, guys. Nice work, good sir. I'm gonna stop talking about it because I could probably keep going. But hey, you've done good, kid. You've done good. All right, next mark now. This is by BD, and this is Toa Whenua. Or Whenua, 1W, I don't know. Whenua. I always used to call him Onawa as a kid because I was like, yeah, it's close enough. Anyway, Whenua. So I certainly think that the head design on this thing is really interesting. I don't know what that piece is. It looks sort of like chromey gold. It also kind of looks like maybe it's like ribbon or something. I don't know. Actually, I think it's behind the mask. I thought it was like sort of flowing through it or something. I don't know what that piece is. It could be something from like Monkey Kid or something. I'm not sure. Regardless, though, I do kind of like this just sort of blank facade underneath the helmet that is just this sort of, I don't know, golden force that makes up the inside of the head that this helmet is over the top of. It's kind of interesting. It's kind of different, really. So I don't know. I like it. I think I'm always a big fan of that sort of stuff. Just things that are different and alien and don't always make sense, but it's challenging the norm, and that can certainly enhance a mock for sure. So I really do enjoy that. I also quite enjoy these weird weapons. There's something almost sort of, I don't know, kind of like Attack on Titan with them to a degree. It kind of feels like the maneuver gear there, but I don't know. I also just kind of like the fact that these weapons have this sort of like flowing ribbon or like kind of chain, whatever you want to refer to it as, coming out of it. There's just a nice like look or aesthetic to it. I don't know. I kind of see it that maybe he kind of like flings these anchor weapon things forward and sort of like draws it back, perhaps. So I don't know. Again, you get a bit of an idea of how he'd maybe fight and use the weapons that he has, which I think is certainly interesting. I also quite like the leg designs on this mock here, as well as the feet. So some of the comments below were saying they felt that the feet might be a little bit small, kind of out of proportion. I don't know. I think that's kind of similar to their helmet. There's something kind of quirky and different about it. I don't hate it. I think it's certainly interesting. And I like the fact that we see the sort of slicer headpiece being used on the kind of around the knees on this mock here. Just the general shaping and texture of that flows quite nicely into the Star Wars shin leg pieces there that we see on the Star Wars Ultra Build sets. There's just some nice kind of textural consistency between the two there. I think it just looks pretty cool. So yeah, overall a pretty unique and different take on Whenua here. So yeah, really nice job. Let's move on now to the final mock in this episode. Yeah, and this one is by our boy Buttloaf Builds, and this is Toa Whenua. I always did enjoy Toa Whenua, and honestly, this is a banger of a revamp for him here. There's some fantastic part usages all throughout this. But first off, I just want to talk about the awesome concept that is this sort of like jackhammer-inspired sort of like drills on the side of his arms. It's quite reminiscent of the original like weapons that Whenua had, which were these sort of, I don't know, kind of like mining shovels that also sort of doubled as drills when he kind of put them together. So yeah, I like this very different interpretation, and I also really like the color choice here too. I think that's very very unique and very cool to see indeed. I'm sure there's been some very deliberate inspiration there from Iron Man 3 with all of the plethora of different armors that Iron Man has. It certainly looks pretty similar color scheme and general kind of build wise, which, hey, there's a lot of fantastic Iron Man armor designs out there that were in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and that are in the comics and that are just from people's imaginations and all sorts of other source materials. So certainly a good thing to take some inspiration from because it looks pretty freaking cool. And I think it's a perfect complement for a Toa of Earth here. like Whenua. I love that idea. Great concept in general. There's a really nice part use here towards sort of the base of these drill pieces. These are like Duplo camera pieces. It's always rare to see Duplo being used in mocks because it's weird. I've met a lot of AVOLs who have a bigger version to it and just hate it. But hey, I mean, they have some really interesting pieces. Like that camera piece just looks cool, you know? So yeah, by all means, I think it's a beautiful part use and beautifully flows with the rest of the design there. So yeah, look, if you've got some Duplo in your collection, play around with it, because if you can come up with some cool techniques with it, it's something people don't do that often, so I do like that. Some other stuff on this mock that's cool is another nice part use on the torso here, using the Mystica kind of launcher piece. It works really well there as this sort of like kind of like fleshy like tubing that sort of makes up the sort of bulk of the torso there. It looks pretty cool. It looks like something you might see on some sort of like some sort of mech or something, and obviously Bionicle being quite mechanical in nature, it seems very fitting and sort of slightly like industrial to a degree. Just a really nice part use there, and naturally that piece itself is quite sort of flexible, so I guess you can really kind of play with it too if you were to insert it into a mock, really kind of bend it and move it, because the piece is made to do that. So it could make connecting it and actually using it a bit easier if you were to maybe use that piece yourself in some different ways in some mocks. So certainly something to think about. Speaking of pieces being a bit more kind of malleable in nature, there's some very nice tubing just throughout this mock, using some of the more very kind of flexible tubing elements, and these tire pieces which have been inverted and inserted onto the sort of shoulders on this mock here. I just love how that looks. I like the fact that this mock has this real industrial vibe to it, this sort of jackhammer construction kind of feeling to it, and these sort of tubes and pistons and things kind of running through it give it this very industrial feeling. It's very nice. It's just a nice look to that in general, and I always love seeing tires incorporated like that. I think that they just really kind of perfectly complement the general shaping of that torso there. It's really nice to see. And speaking of things complementing, I love the waist as well. That same slicer headpiece that I was referring to before has been used there on the crotch. And again, texture-wise, shaping-wise, it very much matches the armor pieces, the sort of larger thigh armor pieces, which again appear on Star Wars Ultra Build sets. Those work beautifully there. So some very nice consistency with textures, and just in general, it looks really, really cool. So that is very, very awesome. So yeah, love your work there, good sir. Again, I very much liked what Alex Mox did, but honestly, this is another really big banger of a mock in this collab. It might be one of my favorites. So that's it for 6 Toa Metru from this Toa Metru collab. Be sure to check out the builders in this episode, because hey, they're all very talented people. They built a lot of other really cool stuff, and you should check it out. And there are links in the description below to all the links for these mocks, so by all means take a look. In the description below is also all the info for my own social media, my Patreon, all that sort of stuff. So if you want to support me on Patreon, you want to check out some of the things I'm posting on my social media, that is the place to head. I'm typically most active on Instagram, I suppose. I occasionally post on Flickr every now and then. I keep forgetting. I have some stuff to post on Flickr. I need to do it soon. But hey, you can check it out and you can see when I do post on Flickr and when I very much do post on Instagram. I only post something the other day, and I'm sure when this episode comes out, there'll be some new stuff on there. So be sure to take a look if that appeals to you. Additionally, if you want to see some of your own mocks on the Bionicle Inspiration series, the only way to do so is to email them to the submission email. It's on your screen right now, but it's also in the description below. All you have to do is write me an email to that email, bissubmission@hotmail.com, and include images, info, whatever you want to put in that email. Send it my way, and then I'll add your mock to the list, and one day it'll appear on the show. But I get a lot of submissions, so your patience is, of course, very important there. Please and thank you. Anyway, that's it for this episode. Hopefully you enjoyed these very, very cool Toa Metru mocks, and by all means, if you've got some suggestions for future themes, or some suggestions for just mocks you want to see or stuff going on, leave a comment on the video, because you can do that now. The comments are back, don't forget. Anyway, thank you very much. Happy building. Bye for now.